So the story began with a little girl named Adelaide, but since it's a long name, let's call her Abby. In 1986, when Abby was just 8, her parents took her to the Santa Cruz beach for a summer carnival. The place was buzzing with lights, music, and all sorts of carnival games. But later that night, when her dad got distracted, Abby quietly slipped away and came across a strange-looking funhouse filled with different kinds of mirrors. At first, Abby found it funny, like every other kid. But then, she noticed something weird. One of the reflections wasn't moving. It stood completely still, watching Abby like it was alive. But before she could understand what she saw, the lights blacked out. Later, when her parents found her, something about Abby had completely changed. She became quiet, distant, and mute. The doctors said the girl was in shock, and with time, she'll start talking again. Years passed, and the little Abby grew up. She got married to a man named Gabe Wilson, and together they had 2 kids, Zora and Jason. One day, the family decides to visit Santa Cruz Beach, the same place where Abby spent her entire childhood. But Abby doesn't seem too excited. That one night at the carnival, the funhouse still haunts her. She doesn't want to go back, but Gabe somehow convinced her. Later, the family drove towards the beach, where Gabe met up with his old friends, Josh and Kitty, along with their twin daughters. When everyone got busy and chatting, Jason noticed something weird, a strange man standing alone by the water. Curious, he steps closer and sees the man is soaked in blood, back turned, arms stretched, like a scarecrow. Jason stared at him for a while, confused. He didn't say much, but something about that man clearly unsettled him. Then, he noticed some footprints, which led him to the same funhouse. However, before he could step inside, Abby showed up and brought him back. That night, Abby finally shares the truth. She tells Gabe everything about the funhouse and why she's always felt like someone's watching her, but Gabe doesn't really understand. He tries to brush it off, calling it some childhood fear. Suddenly, the lights went out. At the same time, Jason walked into the room and said, "There's a family standing in our driveway." At first, Gabe thinks it's a joke or some kind of prank, but when they peek outside the window, their hearts drop. A family of 4, standing still in front of their house. Gabe steps outside and asks them to leave, but no one responds. So he grabs a baseball bat and heads out again, this time more serious. But the moment he steps forward, the strangers start chasing him. Gabe rushed back inside and locks the door. Meanwhile, Abby grabs the kids and tries to call 911. But before they can do anything, the strangers use a hidden key and somehow unlock the door. When they get closer, Gabe realizes Abby wasn't wrong. The people who are standing in front of him look exactly like them. Same face, same height, even the same kids. The doppelgangers forced Wilsons to sit on the floor while they stood over them, holding large golden scissors. But none of them could speak, except one. The woman who looked just like Abby stepped forward. Her name was Red. Red had a broken voice, like she was talking after years. She revealed that people call them tethered, the shadows. They lived their entire lives under a basement, mimicking every move that Wilson's ever made. To explain her pain, Red shared a story about a girl and her shadow, referring to herself and Abby. She said while Abby got warm meals, she got raw rabbits. Abby had a choice to fall in love, but Red got stuck with Abraham just because he was Gabe's shadow. And the kids. She never wanted to have them because deep down she knew they would come out different, broken. But since Abby chose to have children, she left with no choice. That's how she gave birth to Umbre and Pluto, all because of Abby. But now she's here to live the life she always dreamed of. After all the talking, Red makes Abby cuff herself to the table. Meanwhile, Abraham drags Gabe into another room. Umber runs after Zora, and Pluto corners Jason to play some weird game with fire. Their plan was simple: divide and rule. Zora runs and hides behind the car, but Umbre finds her within seconds. Just when she's about to stab her, a man comes and starts yelling at her for standing on his car. She gets distracted, and using this opportunity, Zora manages to escape. Meanwhile, Umbre attacks the man and takes his life. Back at home, Abraham knocks Gabe out. Then, he stuffs him into a garbage bag and drags him onto a boat, planning to dump him in the middle of the ocean. Gabe keeps struggling inside the bag, but somehow managed to rip a small hole, big enough to spot that Abraham brought a baseball bat with him. Just then, the boat stops working. Gabe uses the chance, freed himself, grabs the bat, and hits Abraham, knocking him into the water. But then, the boat suddenly jerks forward, and he falls in too. Within a few seconds, the boat slows down and Gabe climbs back. But Abraham suddenly comes from behind and tries to attack. Gabe quickly pushes him away, and this time, he makes sure that Abraham never returns. At home, Jason noticed something strange. Pluto was mimicking his every move. So he makes a plan. First, he distracts Pluto with his fire ring. And when Pluto starts to copy, Jason quickly slips out and locks him inside the room. The plan works, but not for long. Red hears the noise, heads straight to that room, and unlocks the door. Meanwhile, Abby, who was still cuffed to the table, noticed a fireplace poker. Using that, she breaks her cuff, finds Jason, and runs out of the house. There, they find Zora and then run towards the port. Meanwhile, in another part of town, the Tyler family get attacked by their doppelganger. At the same time, Wilsons arrive at the Tyler house. When Josh opens the door, Abby realized it was his double. She tries to hit his head, but it barely does anything. All of a sudden, another double comes from behind, takes hold, and drags her in. On the other side, Josh's double started moving toward them. Gabe quickly ran away to draw him off, while the kids rushed inside to find their mother. Zora grabs a bat and starts following Abby's voice, which was coming from upstairs. There, they find the bodies of the Tyler sisters, while their doppelgangers were casually playing in the background. Suddenly, one of them appears in front of Zora. In panic, Zora strikes back and the girl falls down. But before she could catch her breath, the other twin appears, and Zora manages to defeat her as well. Meanwhile, Gabe runs back to the boat and starts waiting for the right moment. When that imposter gets close, Gabe shoots him with a flare gun and leaves him to die. Kitty's double was watching all of that through the window. Seeing her distracted, Zora sneaks up from behind and tries to attack. But Kitty isn't like the others. She easily overpowers Zora. And just when it seemed like everything was over, Jason comes from behind and knocks her out with a single blow. After all of that, the Wilsons sit together and try to call 911, but no one picks up. So they turn on the TV and realize it wasn't just happening to them. According to the news reports, people are being attacked by their lookalikes. These imposters are coming out of the sewers to kill their counterparts. And after each attack, they're seen forming a long human chain across cities. Since the entire country is under attack, the Wilsons decide to leave the town and escape to Mexico. But before they could get away, Umbre shows up. Zora tries to hit her, but Umbre jumps on the hood. In panic, Zora slams the brakes. At that speed, the sudden stop throws Umbre off, which eventually ends her life. The family drives off trying to get as far as they can. But the road ahead isn't safe either. Several cars have been set on fire to block their way. Then, out of nowhere, Pluto appears. Abby steps out to handle him, but Pluto remains still, staring at them, like he's waiting for something. That's when Jason realizes it's a trap. Pluto wants to blow up the car before they can escape. Jason asks everyone to get out, and before he could start the fire, Jason begins walking backward, knowing that Pluto will copy him, which he does, and ultimately lose his life. But the real danger is still waiting. Red grabs Jason and disappears. Abby runs after them, and soon she finds herself standing in front of the same place she entered all those years ago, the old funhouse. But this time, she isn't scared. There, she finds a hidden door that takes her into the basement. It looked like a secret chamber, long halls, dim lights, and lots of rabbits. Abby kept walking until she found Red inside in an old classroom. She was standing in front of a blackboard, drawing something on it. Abby asks about Jason, but Red doesn't respond. Instead, she starts yapping about the secret of their existence. Red explains that they weren't born like normal humans. They were made out of greed. Years ago, the government initiated a secret experiment of creating clones. Their aim was to control people by linking their souls with created copies, so they can use them as puppets. But the whole thing failed. The connection didn't work like they dreamed of. So they abandoned this project and left the shadows to die. From generations, they kept living like robots, mindlessly copying their originals without even knowing why. But that day, when she first met Abby, she realized that the universe brought them face to face for a reason. To her, Abby was proof that the life above wasn't impossible. That thought became her purpose. After years of struggle, she finally managed to get out. and now she won't let Abby take that away. Finally, the two begin to fight. Red strike with grace. She was fast, too fast. However, Abby doesn't lose hope and keeps fighting. Then, as a final move, Red attacks Abby from behind. But before she could get close, Abby turns and takes her down, on the verge of death. Red begins to hum a familiar tune, the same tune Abby had heard the first time she met Red, which really annoys her. In a fit of rage, Abby grabs the handcuffs and strangles her with bare hands. When everything gets over, Abby takes a deep breath and starts looking for Jason. She finds him hiding inside a locker, scared but safe. Then they walk outside and find Gabe and Zora, who were hiding in an ambulance. After that, the Wilsons drove off to Mexico, but Jason looked uneasy, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. And that's when the truth finally comes out. When little Abby went into the funhouse, she was attacked by her double. Red knocked her out, dragged her in the basement, and cuffed her to the bed. Then she took Abby's clothes and walked out of that place pretending to like the real Abby. That's the real reason behind why Abby couldn't speak for months after coming out of that funhouse, because shadows didn't know how to speak. Meanwhile, Red, the one we looked at as a clone, was actually a real human being. That's why she was so different. That's why she knew how to talk. The real Abby stayed trapped underground for years and slowly became Red. As Jason was pretty smart, he figured it out that his mother was a clone. Maybe it clicked while he watched her fight. Or maybe it was the way she looked after or the way she screamed. Either way, he didn't say anything. She was still his mom and he accepted that. This is how the story ends. Us isn't just a horror film. It's the kind of story that lingers in your mind long after the credits roll, not because of jump scares or creepy masks, but because it holds up a mirror. And what you see in that mirror isn't always pretty. Jordan Peele took a simple concept and turned it into a full-blown masterpiece. Through the lens of horror, he talked about class, privilege, and the rotten system, which always wanted to control our lives. However, at some places, the writing does get a little messy. For instance, if the government abandoned this project, who kept providing the rabbits, the clothes, all the other essentials? And most importantly, why did Red, a real human with a free will, stay down there? Why did she marry that clone? Why didn't she leave earlier? The logic stumbles a bit, but overall, the movie is mind-blowing. If you're a fan of layered storytelling and eerie vibes, I 100% recommend watching this one. And if you've already seen Us before, maybe give it another shot. You might catch something you missed the first time, because this movie isn't just about them, it's about us.